Well, it has been a whirlwind of a day in Washington, D.C. in the wake of FBI Director James Comey's firing yesterday. Earlier today, President Trump met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, as well as Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak, the same person at the center of the Michael Flynn scandal. Now, this is important to note. The only images that we got out of that meeting are from the Russian government. The United States press was kept out, which is unprecedented and deserves mention.
Yeah. Our own Liz Palmer actually managed to get reaction to Comey's firing from Russian President Vladimir Putin before a hockey game today in Russia. The Russian president said that it was a U.S. government affair, that Russia has nothing to do with it. Well, President Trump, meanwhile, met with former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in the Oval Office earlier today and spoke about his decision to fire Comey.
Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
Did you affect the meeting of the Russian president?
Excuse me? Not at all.
Now, certainly, there are many reporters who are already on social media questioning why President Trump was meeting with Henry Kissinger, who, for those of you who may recall, was the Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, as many people have called the move that President Trump pulled yesterday Nixonian. So let's bring in Paula Reid to talk about what happens next out there in terms of who will potentially replace Jim Comey as head of the FBI. Paula, there are a couple of names that are being floated around as interim director. What can you tell us about the candidates?
That's right. After the FBI director was fired, the question became, okay, who's going to run the FBI? Do they have a succession plan in place? It was apparent that they did not. So the law dictates that the deputy at the FBI becomes the acting director. That is Andrew Mccabe. But we're told this morning that the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General have interviewed 4 high-level justice officials to replace, potentially, Mccabe as an interim director. So again, that person would be the temporary placeholder until the White House and the Department of Justice agree on someone to nominate for a 10-year term. Now, those people who have been interviewed, it is the head of the FBI field office in Richmond, the head of the FBI field office in Chicago, Paula Reid, a very high-level official at FBI headquarters here in Washington, D.C., as well as a counterintelligence executive at ODNI. So these are 4 extremely experienced, high-level justice officials who are being considered to potentially replace Andrew Mccabe as that interim director.
So if this is just a temporary position, why not just keep Andrew Mccabe?
That's a great question. One of the problems with Andrew Mccabe taking over for Comey is the fact that Andrew Mccabe is also implicated in the investigation into how the FBI handled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's server. Specifically, he is the subject of an internal watchdog investigation for why he didn't recuse himself. There are questions about whether or not he should have stepped aside in that investigation, because when his wife ran for office in Virginia, she took money from a Clinton-linked donor. So if your justification for firing James Comey is the series of decisions that he made after that investigation closed, it's hard to really sell the idea that Andrew Mccabe is therefore qualified to run the FBI.
All right, Paula, let's talk about Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He said that he would recuse himself from having anything to do with the Trump-Russia investigation. So why doesn't he see a problem being involved with the James Comey firing, considering that Comey is leading that investigation?
Right. So what justice officials tell me on the record is that they do not believe that yesterday's decision relates to the Clinton email investigation. Stay with me now. Their argument is that Sessions made this decision about Comey's process, the way he behaved after the investigation was over. And that, they say, is separate and distinct from the investigation itself or any future decision to reopen the investigation. Now, Vlad, intelligent minds can disagree about that legal analysis, but that is why Sessions says that there is no problem with him helping to make this decision to fire FBI Director Comey, even though he has promised to recuse himself from any further steps in the investigation itself.
Well, Comey was actually supposed to be testifying during a Senate intelligence hearing tomorrow, and the topic was the Russian investigation. We've now learned that he won't be doing that anymore. The acting director, Andrew Mccabe, will be testifying instead. Is that going to have an impact?
I think it will have an impact. You're going to clearly get a variety of questions just like we saw when Comey was on the Hill, you're probably going to get just as many questions about the Clinton investigation as you are about the Russia investigation. Andrew Mccabe is probably having a very busy day right now, studying in and getting ready for that hearing. But based on what I'm hearing when I was at the Department of Justice earlier today, it seems like it may be unlikely that Andrew Mccabe will still be in that position, and this hearing may need to be postponed.
Paula, before we let you go, I want to ask your take. Put on your lawyer hat here for us for a second. And the notice, the termination letter that President Trump sent to Director Comey, in it he says, while I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I'm not under investigation. You talked a lot about the process, and that seems to be the issue that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has with the former now head of the FBI. We asked a former FBI Assistant Director, Ron Hosko, if this seemed in line with something that Jim Comey would do. And regardless of who he is as a person, would the FBI Director who is conducting, or agents that are conducting an investigation into possible collusion with the Russian government, into the Russian hack, would the FBI Director tell the President of the United States on 3 separate occasions that he's not under investigation? Would that be standard operating procedure? I'm not saying that he didn't do it. I'm just saying, I'm just questioning whether or not that would be SOP.
It would be highly unusual, and it would be imprudent, because anytime you open an investigation, you never know where that investigation will lead and who could potentially be implicated and what kind of crimes. For example, you could open a stalking investigation and it turns into an investigation about mishandling classified information. That is, of course, the case for General Petraeus. So it would be highly unusual, really hard to believe, that FBI Director Comey would tell the president that he is not under investigation. What could have happened is that this could be sort of a semantics game, where usually the way this investigation is described, it is described as being an investigation into the Trump campaign and whether or not the president or any associates had any improper ties to Russia. Now, for a parallel, the Hillary Clinton server investigation, Hillary Clinton was not specifically being investigated. It was anyone who used that server could have faced criminal charges, anyone who mishandled classified information. So the president could be trying to split hairs and say, well, I wasn't under investigation specifically. It's just the campaign. So two possible scenarios there. But it's just hard to imagine that the FBI director, former FBI director, would have even broached that topic with the president.
All right. Paula Reid, thank you so much for your insight.